Ellie, and this is my audience. Okay. I interviewed Ivy Woofenden, who's an equine trainer, a 2020 participant in the Utah Wild Horse and Burro Festival, and an owner of a yearling Mustang that was gathered up by the Utah Bureau of Land Management. And she also happens to be my sister. I asked Ivy a few questions about her involvement with the Bureau of Land Management process, also known as the BLM, the adoptive incentive, and her thoughts on the gatherings of wild horses and burros by the BLM across the United States. First, I asked her how she got involved with the BLM process, specifically the adoptions and the festival. She said, "I was driving one day and heard a commercial on the radio for the Utah Wild Horse and Burro Festival. I looked more into it and ended up going. The festival includes competitions with wild Mustangs and burros and then an auction at the end. That day, I purchased a 60-day gentled Mustang. I wanted to break her to ride. Her name is Sundance, and I have been continuously working with her since the adoption." I also asked Ivy if she thinks the BLM adoptive incentive is a positive thing. And this is what she said. "I think it's a great thing. I don't think it is very popular or well known. It's not publicized well, but even being able to take in a few horses is going to make somewhat of an impact in regards to the management of the wild horses on the public rangelands." I also asked her if she supports the BLM gathering up a portion of the wild horse and burro population across the nation each year. And this is what I want to specifically talk to you all about today. And I will share Ivy's opinion a little later on. Along with Ivy, I have grown up with horses and I have a love for them as well. I will say that my passion lies in the sheep department, but I have been to a few BLM competitions and auctions myself, so I am familiar with the process. So the question is, should the Bureau of Land Management conduct gathers of wild horses and burros across the deserts of the United States? And I am here to tell you, yes, the BLM should conduct gathers of these wild animals. For those who are not familiar with this topic, which actually seems to be a lot, gathers are the removal of a portion of wild horses and burros from public rangelands. I'm pretty confident you all know what a horse is, but if you don't know what a burro is, it's basically a small donkey. And there are two main arguments within this topic. The first one is that the BLM should gather up a portion of these wild animals each year. And I'm sure you can guess the counter argument, which is that the BLM should not gather up any horses or burros from the rangelands. And then there are also some that believe there is an alternative option, which is to solely use birth control to limit population growth. Despite the importance of the gathers, there are still many myths surrounding this topic. I want to address 3 of those myths with you today. The first myth, gathers are inhumane. Second, gathers are conducted to make room for cattle to graze on public rangelands. And the third myth is the BLM's policy is to sell or send the wild horses to slaughter. I want you to understand the great need and importance of the gatherings. And for you to see and understand the importance, I need to explain these myths to you and why they are false. The first myth, gathers of wild horses and burros are inhumane. There are groups such as the American Wild Horse Campaign and Return to Freedom that believe this is true. These organizations like to call the removal of the horses roundups rather than what the BLM refers to them, which is gathers. According to the Horse Conservation, Return to Freedom, roundups are especially dangerous when conducted by using helicopters that drive fleeing wild horses over long distances, often rough terrain. Certain groups see the gathers as a dangerous and inhumane act conducted by the BLM. But this is false. The BLM does not want to or look to hurt or harm these wild horses as they remove them from the public rangelands. The BLM states, the gathers have proven to be more humane, effective, and efficient than other types of gather methods when large numbers of animals need to be removed over wide areas or rugged terrain. and they lead to lower rates of injury and mortality than comparable capture operations for native big game species. The BLM describes how gathers are conducted by helicopter. Helicopters start the horses moving in the right direction and then back off sometimes 1/4 to 1/2 mile from the animals to let them travel at their own pace. Horses are moved at a more rapid pace when they need to be turned or as they reach the entrance to the capture site. Removing a portion of these wild animals is very necessary. The National Horse and Burro Rangeland Coalition agrees with this, and they said, because these animals do not have natural predators and their populations are capable of doubling every 4 years without management, horse populations can increase to a point where food will become limited, leading to starvation. So the removal of these animals is necessary for their health and safety. This myth that gathers performed by the BLM are inhumane is false. Unfortunate things can happen, but it is never the intention of the BLM or the way in which they conduct the removals. Let's talk about the second myth. Gathers of wild horses and burros are performed to make room for cattle and other livestock to graze on the public rangelands. The American Wild Horse Campaign claims the federal government uses costly and cruel practices to eliminate wild horses and burros from our public lands to clear the way for taxpayer-subsidized livestock grazing. However, this is not true. The BLM states, the removal of wild horses and burros from public rangelands is carried out to ensure rangeland health, in accordance with land use plans that are developed in an open public process. The National Horse and Burro Rangeland Management Coalition explains how overgrazing damages the environment. Horses and burros damage landscapes by trampling vegetation, hard packing the soil, and overgrazing forage plants. So horses tend to eat down to the root of the plants, so often there is little to no regrowth. And the BLM sees how this overgrazing is extremely dangerous to the ecosystem. The Bureau of Land Management does not remove wild horses from public rangelands to make room for cattle or other livestock to graze. The third myth. The BLM's policy is to sell or send the wild horses and burros to slaughter. Animal activists and other groups believe this to be true. The Horse Conservation Return to Freedom asks the question, how can the BLM guarantee that no federally protected wild horses will ever again be brutally slaughtered when it comes to selling wild horses? And I'm here to tell you this is false. This is not the policy of the BLM. The BLM addresses this myth. The Department of the Interior and the Bureau of Land Management care deeply about the well-being of wild horses both on and off the range, and it has been and remains the policy of the BLM not to sell or send wild horses or burros to slaughter. The BLM has an adoptive program for these wild animals, which I actually mentioned a little bit about in the beginning in my interview with Ivy and her experience with this program. And Ivy stated in her interview, I do support the removal of a portion of these horses and burros every year because they will just keep multiplying and the herds will continue to get bigger and bigger. There's not enough rangeland to support the population. Horses will eat all day if you let them. So I do support the removals and the adoption program. The BLM wants to place these horses in good homes. They have programs put in place to care for these animals once they are removed from the public rangelands. Unfortunately, you can't ever fully guarantee what a buyer will do with them after they have been bought. So it can happen, but it is never the intention of the BLM or the BLM's policy. And to conclude, I want to remind you all that the gathering of a portion of wild horses and burros each year is necessary and very important. The Bureau of Land Management conducts gathers for the health and safety of the wild horses and burros and for the benefit of the ecosystem. So please don't fight the BLM on these gathers. The purpose is for the benefit of the land and animal. And I would say if you can, maybe even take part in adopting a wild horse or burro. Thank you.